Hi, I'm a long-term teacher at an art school who is considered by some to be competent. RateMyProfessors.com has me right there in the lower middle area of teaching adequacy. Therefore, I am more than qualified to share my insights into visual composition. There are two main archetypes of composition, what I like to call classical and Baroque. To illustrate these ideas, I will start by drawing two small sketches, what designers call thumbnail drawings. They are quick, simple, and freehand visual ideas for a design. As design elements, I will use basic geometric shapes, a square, triangle, circle, and a wider rectangle. Despite the fact that the two designs share identical subject matter, they are very different. The one on the left is an example of classical design. The one on the right is an example of Baroque design. So what are the differences? Let's divide each one with a vertical line down its center. In the classical design, the two sides are very similar. It has a symmetrical balance. In the Baroque design, the two sides are very different. It has an asymmetric balance. In the classical one, your eye will follow a strong horizontal movement. In the Baroque design, your eye will follow a strong diagonal movement between a lower corner and the opposite upper corner. In classical design, everything that is important is contained within the frame. In Baroque design, often you see cropping, which means the cutting of a shape by the frame. This suggests that the frame does not necessarily contain all the important stuff, but, like a snapshot, gives a partial view of a larger reality. The emotional feelings a classical design conveys include a sense of calm, authority, and control. With Baroque designs, there is a sense of dynamic energy, excitement, and even that things are a little out of control. The easiest way to think of these two types of design is to consider the two kinds of photographs associated with a wedding. The formal wedding pictures with the wedding party posed in front of the altar are classical compositions. The pictures taken at the wedding reception with energetic folks dancing, garter belts being hiked up legs, etc., are probably Baroque design. Now let's look at some examples from the history of art. There is no greater example of classical design than Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. A vertical line down the center reveals the beautiful symmetrical balance, but the two sides are not identical, and it is the variations that add such compelling visual interest. The central figure of Christ shows this notion of variation within symmetry. Red on one side, blue on the other, one hand palm down, the other palm up, head slightly turned, and one side more in light and the other more in shadow. On either side of Christ are 6 figures. Each group of 6 is broken into 2 groups of 3. These 12 characters show plenty of variations. Leonardo uses the architecture of the room to create three-dimensional space. The vanishing point of the walls of the room is behind Christ's head. And notice the little arch behind his head, which serves as a natural halo. Geometry is very important to classical designers. Note how Christ fits perfectly into an equilateral triangle, the most stable of all geometrical shapes. The dominant visual thrust of this composition is horizontal. Your eye moves from side to side. By the way, some classical designs use a vertical movement, such as Masaccio's Holy Trinity. This one, too, makes a very strong use of geometry, especially a triangle implied by connecting the figures. The Baroque period in art history was around the 17th century, and a great example of Baroque design is Peter Paul Rubens' painting of Prometheus, lying in agony as a great raptor eats his liver. Notice that a vertical line down the center reveals two sides that are very different but asymmetrically balanced. The overall visual thrust is clearly diagonal. Often there are visual elements that play off perpendicularly against the main diagonal. The abstract artist Frank Stella wrote about how the feeling of space in Baroque images is often created not by architecture, but by the figures themselves. Arms, legs, and torsos thrusting in directions towards and away from the picture plane. Because of the dynamism, Baroque design is more emotional and earthy than the perfect spiritual calm of classical designs. If you look carefully, the notion of classical versus Baroque design appears everywhere in our visually soaked culture. These principles can be found in today's art, advertising, even movies and TV. The principal idea is that composition, independent of subject matter, can evoke an emotional response in the viewer. That is why it is so important that competent art teachers like myself explain these things to a new generation of art students.